Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time it is for you all out there. So we're going to talk about the dark web, and it's kind of three components: the surface web, the deep web, and the dark web. So we're going to explain a little bit about them and a quick tutorial, if you will, of how you can access it if you want to try to access it on your own. So a little bit about me. Paul already said a lot of information. One of the main things is I was on the early project as the Navy representative that brought internet access to ships at sea. So that was in 1991, and then we started having to do research. And what you're going to find out is the actual deep web was created by the U.S. Navy. All this stuff that's out there, the Tor Onion project, all that type of stuff, was actually created by the Navy when we were doing research and trying to figure out ways to put information out there that people could extract. Well, just like the internet has done, this got out of control. So as we know now, there's a lot of data that is not even searchable on the web without doing special passwords and those types of things. And we'll talk a little bit as we go through about that. So we're going to look at the darknet. The darknet, again, is the components of all three, as we'll see. We're going to look at who uses it, talk about the different areas, the different components of it that make up the actual darknet, surface web, deep web, and dark web. And then how do you access it? How do you access this dark, deep content? And we'll talk about the different ways of doing that. Then we'll talk about some consistency across users. So some recent data has come out, and I have it in the presentation. What exactly, when you're actually looking and trying to research or can identify who these people are, you'll be surprised how consistent the actual data is across users. And we'll talk about why that is and the importance of, when you're doing some type of investigation, how easy it is to track these people who are the main malware authors, the main exploit writers, because of the way they set up their accounts across the actual deep and dark web. Okay, and then we're going to talk about cyber threat intelligence. What are the goals of cyber threat intelligence and what you can do to help try to protect your organization by identifying what's available out there on the net already. Okay, so the dark net. It's a hidden internet that exists underneath the surface web. As I said, the surface web, as we'll discuss here coming up, is what we see, and it's indexed and searchable by Google, by Bing, by DuckDuckGo, your favorite search engines. All of that information is searchable. And if you noticed on the first slide that Paul had up, which is similar to the image I'm showing you here, just the tip of that iceberg is the visible net. The rest of it's hidden from view, and you might be surprised to find out how much it's actually hidden. We got some data coming up on that. And just like the internet has done for pretty much everybody and globally, it's gotten very large. Well, so has the actual hidden and the actual deep or the dark web components, which, the dark web, of course, is the actual more illegal criminal activity, and it keeps growing and growing. So that's the challenge we have. We can only access it with specific software configurations or authorization. A lot of times it's non-standard communications protocols and ports. So what you normally do in the surface web will not work when you go into the deep or the dark web, and we'll discuss some of that. Then there's two types. There's friend-to-friend networks and privacy networks such as Tor. And Tor is the main one that we use to access most of this information. The reciprocal term for an encrypted darknet is the Clearnet or the surface web, and that's that tip of the iceberg. And that's what we all use every day. We all search around on that tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot of information deeper, and then in the dark section is just the section of the deep web that is where most of the criminal activity is. They're often associated with criminal activities of various degrees, and it's sad, but you can literally order assassinations in there and a lot of different types of things. So I have quite a few colleagues who do nothing but sit in the actual dark web and pretend to be one of them to try to identify different types of plots against different governments and those types of things. So here's the breakdown. So when you look here, this is some of what Paul had up there. You got the surface web where you got the search engines I've talked about. You got the deep web, which is academic information, government resources, those types of things. And then you got that dark web down there, mostly with your encrypted data and your hackers, where all the illegal information resides. So these are the ways you want to think about it. So this information in that dark web is intentionally hidden and made inaccessible via search engines. The Tor network is only accessible via the Tor browser. And we've got other things we'll talk about as well, but that's how this process works. we use the Tor browser to explore these deep depths of the dark web. And without the Tor browser, we can't do it. And we're going to talk about the actual size of the deep web. And I put the actual website here. It's a good website to go and read about not only deep web, but you'll see some references I'll come up with here in a little while that will show you the search engines and all the other types of things. But when you look at this image, look how the public web is about 4% of the web content, about 8 billion pages. As I said, that's searchable and indexable by Google and search engines that you use every day. But look at the deep web. And remember, below that deep web in that tip area is the dark web. But that area is 7.9 zettabytes. Anybody ever done anything with a zettabyte? I've been up to a petabyte, but never a zettabyte, and multiple petabytes, but not a zettabyte of anything that I've ever had to do with. And when you start thinking about that, if we have zettabytes of data, how are you going to search that data? This is why you can't really search it. You have to use special access to get into it to look for information. So approximately 96% of this digital universe is protected. And it's protected by encryption and passwords. That means to get in that area, you're going to have to do some what we call social hanging out. You might call it social networking, but that means another connotation today. Before we had social media, then it was different. But today, social networking, everybody thinks of Facebook, Twitter, and all that type of stuff. But you've got to get out there and you got to hang out and pretend to be one of those. And they actually rate you. Right? And that's the thing you have to understand. If you want to get into this, and like I said, I have colleagues that do it every day, you have to post things where they don't think you're what they call a noob or a lame-o or those types of things. And if you start asking questions in there and they start flaming you, as they call it, and those types of things, you're not going to get very far. So the best thing to do is to start off, if you're going to search in there, is like a fly on the wall and just watch and listen to things and those types of things. And if you ask somebody a question, be careful because it could identify or out you, as they call you, as somebody who has no business as being in that area. So this is where some of the challenges come in and why you have people offering services to do it for you, because it's a bit of a challenge. So what you might find a little bit strange is the deep web and the dark web. All that area is mainly consisting of databases. This is databases of information. And what we've discovered is most of the data, about 94% of the deep web database, is located not deeper than the 3rd level of the website. So it's not like you got to search all the way through the website. You just got to get initial access to the website. And that can be the additional challenges, because most of your web search engine's only going to cover about 1/3 of that deep web data. All right, so this is the latest information that we've had that's come out here just recently in the last 2 weeks. We're now, and I'm going to talk about a couple of those different projects coming up later in the presentation. We have people trying to figure out algorithms using artificial intelligence, using those types of things to get deeper in there and be able to extract and normalize the data. Because when you have that much data, 7.9 zettabytes, you can imagine about the normalization projects, then the challenges of being able to do that. So directory services try to index the deep web resources. So I know, and I don't want to call out any vendor specific, those types of things, but it's become very popular for them to get you to do a dark or a deep web search. Now, deep web and dark web are different things. Remember, dark web is mostly encrypted and illegal activity, and deep web is just the stuff that you want to hide and not know let anybody know where it's at. So these directory services try to index it, and they actually create their own algorithms for indexing it. But what we found is these directory services, maybe about the best one gets about 15.6% of the deep web indexed. And we're not talking dark web here, we're talking about deep web. Remember, the dark web, you got to have the encryption, you have all the other extra resources you have to have, and it's password protected in many cases. So just the deep web itself, we're today, and this is the most recent information, nothing's been published and newer than I know, but we're only up to about 16% where these actual directory services that are being offered out there can actually search. To really be able to get a really high percentage, you're going to have to spend time in it, and we'll cover some of that coming up in the presentation. So the onion network's anonymity, that's where it all started from, is the onion network. Darknet anonymity is achieved by using this onion network, and you're going to see that when we look at the different options. Computer directly accesses the server hosting the website you are visiting. That's how you do. But in the onion network, they don't have a direct link. you have to bounce around a number of what we call intermediaries or proxies is a more common term before you reach your destination. And that's what the actual onion router network was about. And if you go to the website for Tor, the onion router, which we'll talk about here in a moment, if you go there and you look, you'll see it was designed to go through hundreds, even thousands of machines before you get to the website you're going to. The communication registered on the network bus with transport mediums prevented from knowing who's doing the communication. Remember, anonymity. Tor network, the onion router, the biggest thing and the biggest advertiser for it is this anonymity. To make the popular onion router is fairly user-friendly for anonymous communication is Tor. That's our popular router. And Tor stands for the onion router. That's the one that really started all this. And as I said, it was developed by the Navy. So the military developed this, right? We originally developed this to give us information to share between the military, the government, and law enforcement organizations. But like anything else, it became out of control, and now it's pretty much maintained by different groups. Now there is comments and questions. If you go read the Tor website, you'll see they think that it's watched and monitored as well. So we'll talk about some of the things you have to do to get true anonymity and protection if you're going to go and try to access the dark web. Journalists, political bloggers, right? A lot of different things on there about political and government activity. That's kind of what's the predominant thing on there now, as you'll find out. Whistleblowers, of course, WikiLeaks is one of the famous ones that is located there, and information leakers. News readers to access information on surface web is normally blocked by the firewalls. So what happens is we can't get to these deep web, dark web sites because it's not going to allow you, because the surface web can't access this. We have to use the onion router project. Activists, revolutionaries, a lot of different groups that are hanging out there in the dark net. Okay, and then of course the final one, terrorists and criminals. Great place for them to hide as well. Accessing the hidden network is surprisingly easy. The most popular way to do it is Tor. So all you have to do is download Tor, and then once you install it in your browser, you now have capability to go search and look at the onion sites. And remember, the onion sites are what makes up the deep web and the components of the dark web. 2 clicks from the Tor website and you're done. You're ready to access the darknet. The browser is built on top of Firefox. So what happens is when you open it up, it's just giving you another browser, and you even got a plug-in if you would like to use Firefox that uses the Tor, the onion router project, right? And the key here is you see in this URL is the .onion. All these actual domains end in a .onion, so that's where the onion router comes from. So you have to have Tor, and there's a couple other ones that are out there as well, as we'll discuss later. And you have to actually be able to search and look for the information using this special access into it. Now, one of the important things to remember is you're going through all these different intermediary machines, and you're supposed to be in protected, what we call virtual private network. So because of that, more than likely, it's going to be slow, and I mean very, very slow. Remember, the speed isn't here. It's the protection of the data and the people who's accessing the data. That's the goal. So here's Tor. As it says, they do the anonymity, right? It prevents people from learning location, and it's pretty much for all your platforms out there, right? Windows, Mac, Linux, Unix, Android, all those types of things. And it allows you to defend yourself against network surveillance and traffic analysis. And that's what it was created for. So you could do things with anonymity, right? But unfortunately, like most things, criminals get a hold of it, and then they can do it to do more different things, right? So it's much more than just the actual network. This is where Tor has blossomed and grown since the military and the Navy created it and originated it. That was when it was just the network. Now it's a bunch of components that assist in your anonymity online. So when you look at this image, of course, you have the Tor browser. That's the one we've already talked about. But then you have Tails. Tails is an actual operating system pre-configured to use Tor safely. That is the best way to do it. If you want to do it the safest way, you download Tails, you burn it to a CD or USB, you boot from that, and then you have no presence on any hard drive or any of your system. That's the safest way to do it, right? And then you got other ones in here, Orbot, which is for the Android, terminal command line applications and transports, and OONI, right? The Global Observer Monitoring. Okay. Safe for use. Tails. Privacy for anyone, anywhere. It's a lot live operating system. So what happens is it boots, and when you use Tails, it protects you. If you want to use other browsers, what you have to do is avoid browsers with Java enabled. In fact, that is the first thing that gets you identified as a noob or lame in the communities, is you've got a browser that's Java enabled, right? So the nice thing is when you use the Tor browser, it automatically is running no script and won't allow any JavaScript or anything to run, which is how you want to be accessing the deep and the dark web, because you want to protect your information. And remember, Java has lots and lots of vulnerabilities. So we don't want to be running something on the machine that could be exploited while we're sitting there looking around in the deep or the dark web. The other option you can use, and this is the option that I use in most cases, is create a virtual machine. So you can create a virtual machine using any one of your product popular tools, and then take that snapshot of that virtual machine. So before you connect that virtual machine to any network or do anything with it, take a snapshot of it, all right? Surf the deep and dark web, then revert back to the snapshot. So what that is, do all your research, everything you need to do, and hit snapshot, and select your snapshot. You revert back to the snapshot. So anything you picked up or might have contaminated your machine with is gone. The other thing you can do is boot a live ISO image, which is one of the things I do as well. Ensure none of the tools for the virtual machine software are installed. Very important. You don't want any communication between your host machine and the virtual machine that could cause leakage. If there's a chance of leakage, you don't want to take that chance. So you want to make sure there's nothing set between the host and the actual virtual machine. Now, the problem with it is we all like the features that are available where you can drag and drop and all those types of things. Well, unfortunately, when you do that, that's allowing memory leakages, and there's a lot of hacking tools and things like that that leverage that weakness because of that communication between the machine. So just make sure you follow good, safe practices if you're going to go use it. If you're really concerned, use Tails. Go get that Tails live distro, put it on a CD or a USB key, boot from it, and then you're protected. Disable all access from the guest virtual machine to the host. And you can use VMware Workstation, which is my preferred method, but then also VirtualBox works well here. And I'm showing you here Mint because Mint was snapshot 1. The reason I've highlighted that one is because this Mint OS that I've set up has a snapshot on it, and it's an actual one of the ones I use. So I'll go surf the internet or do some hacking research on different types of things. And while I'm searching for that, I'm picking up whatever I'm picking up. I've got a Tor browser on there, and once I'm done, I just go back to the snapshot and I'm safe. And that's another way to do it. So different ways to help protect yourself when you're in the deep and the dark web. Because remember, there's hackers there for sure, but more, there's criminals there. There's nation state. There's a lot of sponsored type people there as well. So really be careful if you go in there. Another onion network is the Freenet project, which offers similar functionality, right? But this is that private networks. So it's another way of helping add more privacy. And the Invisible Internet Projects is another one, integrated secure email, file storage, sharing plugins, and social features, blogging, and chat, all right? Most important thing there is that bottom bullet. The VPN adds extra protection. You want to make sure you're in a virtual private network before you go do that. Now, you can do research if you go to that deep website I gave you that you've seen the references and you've seen the references coming up. If you go there, then they have recommended VPNs as well. I'll show you the one I use. Some people feel it's monitored by the governments today, and that's possible, but that's the thing there. And there's Freenet. It's just freenetproject.org. You can go actually do it, and you can do different things with strong privacy protection. It's things you can do to help protect yourself, all right? These are all different methods of privacy and anonymity. That's where it all comes from, the privacy and anonymity. What people are using it for is not what the founders actually probably thought it'd be used for, but again, the criminals have taken over a lot of the activity. Here's the Invisible Internet Project. As I said, it's an anonymous network. Simple layer application could use to securely send messages to each other. So it's ways you can hide information and do different types of things and protect data between a community. Diversity and strange contradictions. It's an idealistic place. If you go and you start searching around, you're reading some of the forums, you create your accounts, you do your access, those types of things, you might be amazed at how some of the posts are in these areas. A lot of political writing, a lot of different things. They hate the government, conspiracy theory, those types of things. Main things, freedom of information. They want freedom of information. They don't care what that information is. They want the freedom of information. And if you've ever read any of WikiLeaks stuff, those types of things, they think it's justified because they're sharing information that should be public knowledge. That's where all this stuff comes from. Common for websites to have preaching high ideas and a lot of moralistic stuff, and then the same link clicks you to criminal enterprises where you can buy credit cards, or you can buy malware, or you can buy exploits. So there's a lot of contradictions in there as well. Dark web users, enemies, like I said, they're terrorists, all that type of stuff. They're the biggest users of the darknet communications, criminals. Website experts, criminal hacks share in the same forums, common interest in what? Computer security. Very important. Why? Computer security is important to everybody, so the criminals are out there as well. We learn from them. Think about it. The whole thing of the certified ethical hacker, all these other types of attacking, understand the attacker mindset, is to get us to understand how attackers think, and by doing that, we can help protect our network. Darknet's large criminal marketplace, we already talked about. Bitcoin's always been the popular way to buy things. The most famous one, of course, was the Silk Road. Silk Road was actually taken down. And you can buy everything there from drugs to assassinations when you get into that actual dark web area. All right. Most common traded items when we did the search, when I was doing the research for this, is still hacked PayPal accounts. For those you don't know, PayPal has a lot of hacked information on there. Fake passports, IDs, those types of things. And this is another thing when I do a quick little demo, hoping time permitting, I don't actually show a lot of this stuff because it's live, real information on there, and I don't want to actually show that. I just show some of the process of how to do it. And the one thing is, when you look in there, you might be surprised. Remember, they don't want Java. They don't want all this fancy stuff running. So Flash, forget about it. They don't even work when you use Tor, because remember, you're going through a bunch of different proxies, a bunch of different machines. So if you start using Flash and all those types of things, what's going to happen? It's going to slow down even more. So that's a concern, right? So these are not very professional looking websites. It's like the internet in the 1990s is what we like to tell everybody. And sites hosted on Tor are even slower. So just getting to the websites are slow. And then when you go into more deeper into the logic of the actual deep in the dark web, it's even slower as well. So as I said, I've got colleagues that are doing, and they're pretending to be community people there and working for security and those types of things. And they've got servers that do nothing but constantly pull and then grab data from there and try to do cyber threat intelligence with it. So that's one of the challenges for us as we try to map what's there and taking place there. It's a time-consuming process. Basic designs, no advanced modern features, and the last bullet's there as well. And that happened when I was doing some of the research as I was preparing for this. A lot of the list of the sites that we used to use for pretty much a staple when we talk about the dark web don't work anymore. You click on the link and nothing comes up. So because of that, I didn't even put much of the links in there. I put a little bit, but not that much, because by the time you actually go, just today, if you go try to click and go to some of these sites, they might be gone. So we'll talk about some of the most popular search engines and just use those to get your first level. And remember, 94% of the deep web databases are not deeper than the third level of the website anyway. So if you can get to the website, create your account, because most of them is going to require you to create an account to get good information, especially if you're trying to pretend to be a criminal and befriend them and find credit cards, stuff like that. You're going to have to give up and become some form of a user in the community and get your ratings. And we'll talk about the ratings in a minute. Some items of interest. This is what I was talking about. This was kind of surprising, and it's borne out in the latest research. And the latest research has discovered that there's consistency among the usernames. So you go into the deep web and the dark web, and the users all the same. Why? You're trying to think that detracts from what they're trying to do, anonymity. It does, but there's a reason for it. And the reason for it is reputation. Remember, hackers, when you think about the old days, it was all about, I'm elite. I'm an elite hacker. I can do all this type of stuff. Well, a lot of that still lives in the deep and the dark web. So because reputation is important, what they do is they create a user profile, a username, right? So I'll use for an instance, Computer Guru, that's my username. Computer Guru will post all these different types of things, and each time you post something, people like it, almost like you do in a social networking thing, and it increases your creds. You get better credibility, and once you get more credibility, you get more notoriety. So we retain the same username across 2 or more sites, then a consistent virtual identity is regularly maintained. This is great for us to track down people and identify people of interest. And again, that's cyber threat intelligence. So if you're doing research and you're looking for the latest malware and you find, I'll use Computer Guru again, my handle, Computer Guru's releasing all this malware, right? Okay. So that's what you want to actually see is when you do these types of things, is the virtual identity is regularly maintained. Okay. Persons actively contribute to online hacking communities. As I said, malware samples, general advice, all those types of things. And what we do when we do that is we're giving you what? Notoriety. Somebody's asking a question. Did somebody ask a question? I heard somebody asking a question there. Anyway, put it into the chat window and then I can answer it if you asked a question. I heard somebody's voice. Okay. Social status. It's meritocracy. That's what I was talking about. It's meritocracy. You have to achieve a certain level of social status to get more and more information. So what happens is a lot of researchers, a lot of people that work for governments, nation states, those types of things, they're in there and they're trying to get their creds. When they get their creds, they raise their level of social status. And that's what this big thing's about when we're trying to raise our level of social status and become elite. But we call it elite. They don't call it elite today. And they showcase what they do. If Computer Guru, for instance, a good carder, they come up and they rate him and say, yeah, this guy's excellent carder. He's got great credit cards. Get him from credit cards. If they're good at malware, this guy's malware. He's a malware expert, writes really good malware, good stuff for Android, all that type of stuff. Get from him, right? Those types of things. The last, and I haven't seen it in a while, but it's about 6 months ago, the last data I seen, $90,000 US for a Windows 0 day. That's pretty good payday. So that's the types of things that would give you good credibility in this social status within the hacker community of the dark web. Carry a level rating based on the data that's been discussed. So they get a level. So they literally give them a level. Okay. So cyber threat intelligence. So what I want to do here is walk through some of the types of data you might want to mine from the dark web, and this is that cyber threat intelligence. And that's why I told you I have colleagues that have servers running right now constantly 24/7, and they're doing nothing but looking for malware, the latest malware, the latest exploits, those types of things to try to identify the threat before it actually gets released out into public domain. 5 weeks is a sample set. So we did is we took a 5-week sample set here. This is research that was just completed, I believe, December 31st, I think it was, December 30th, somewhere around there. Tor-based search engine spider services. So we just used Tor-based search engines, right? And we aggregated a list from the hacker forums and the markets. And this is out of this, like I told you, dark web from the actual Cambridge University put this together. So when you look at this, you see there was 27 markets, 11,991 products, right? And vendors, 434, forums, and the subreddit. So it gives the data there. I won't spend too much time on the data because we're starting to get more than 30 minutes into the webinar, and I want to get through everything. But what we did is we took this and we aggregated it into data. 13% of the events were hacker related. That's it. Only 13% of the events that we were able to discover using this method were hacker related. But this was the concern. So this is the number of threats detected, weekly detection of cyber threats. In week 1, about 250. Week 2, 300 plus. And then week 4 was the peak where we hit almost 400 cyber threats in a week. And then 5 tapered down. And we're just doing this as a representation out there for you to see some of the things you have to do with threat intelligence, cyber threat intelligence. So what Cambridge does, if you go take a look at this dark web cyber threat intelligent mining, is they come up with goals of cyber threat intelligence. And we're going to use a cyber threat intelligence system to be able to do that. So when you look here, and I won't spend too much time on the drawing because you have the slides and you have the video and you can actually look at the drawing. But the main thing is you got the human analyst over here on the left. And what they're doing is they're using crawlers, and these crawlers are using HTML in most cases, and they're going into marketplaces and forums, and then they're trying to analyze all this data. Now, the good analogy I like to use of this is if anybody's out there and done intrusion detection before, this is like intrusion detection, but ramped up like exponentially. I mean, this is major data that you have to analyze, and once you analyze that data, you got to extract it and look for what? Tangible or actionable items from the data. And that's the challenge, and that's why there's huge research being poured into this right now. How do we do good cyber threat modeling? So that's not part of this presentation, but if you start looking up some of the research or some of the references in this book here and the one I'm going to talk about momentarily in the presentation, those are good places to start and look at what's being done to do this cyber threat modeling. And you'll have my contact details at the end. I'm working with some colleagues, as I said, they're 24/7 right now, and they're doing cyber threat modeling as well. Okay, so what's the goals of cyber threat intelligence systems? Well, we got to be able to extract that data. So what vendors and users have a presence in the darknet, deepnet market forums? That's the key. If you think about the data when we looked at earlier, the social status is important. So we want to identify who's, I guess for lack of a better term, the noisy people. Who's the noisy people that's always talking? But better than that, they're noisy, but can they back it up? Do they have a lot of credit cards? Do they have a lot of data that's been stolen? Do they have all these types of things? That's key for us when we do this. What zero-day exploits are being developed and who's developing them, all right? Very important that we identify that too for our cyber threat intelligence, especially from a company or government standpoint. We want to know when that latest malware even hits the marketplace, we want to identify what it is and try to get into our countermeasures or contingency. And especially our major vendors, Microsoft, Oracle, all those, they want to know too when it hits. The Android development, all this stuff is critical that we action it as fast as possible. But the challenge is, remember, zettabytes. We're talking zettabytes of data. This is unlike anything we've ever seen. So that's why these servers have to go 24/7 and constantly look at lots and lots of data and try to get the wheat from the chaff, if you will. What vulnerabilities did the latest exploits target? As I said, we want to know where is the threat. This is what we have to know with our system. Types of products exclusive to certain vendors and markets. So who's releasing what? So Computer Guru, I'll go back to that again. Maybe he's releasing a lot of Android, he or she, I should say. Maybe they're releasing a lot of iOS. What are they releasing as products into the marketplace so we can track? And I give it a little bit of an example like I do with security operations centers when I train staffs for security operations centers. They should know what their people they're actually providing services for run. If they're an Oracle shop, if they're a Cisco shop, or if they're Juniper, if they're Palo Alto, doesn't matter what they are, but we're always looking for weaknesses or advertisements for those types of things. That's the same thing with your cyber threat intelligence. You want to be able to identify if Oracle gets a huge vulnerability and your job is to find the actual threats for your client XYZ, that client needs to know there's an Oracle critical vulnerability. That's the key thing here. And these types of searches, I'm not going to get into them too much because we're getting like almost 40 minutes into it, and I still got some slides and I want to do a little very short video demo. So as you see here though, most of these have REST protocol, they have XML, they have a lot of XML, Apache, XML pretty much predominant, and then there's a client server based, the Z39.50, and we give you the advantages. So like anything, what do? Experiment. If you're going to start do this stuff and try to research and do it on your own, experiment. Get these different types of things. I gave you the one resource before that came out in December, and this dark web breakthroughs in research and practice by the IRMA, Information Resource Management Association, just came out last week. So that one's brand new, hot off the press. As I said, there's a lot of research being done in this area. So when you get the references, the tools, and the resources, you can keep up with the latest research. or you have my email, you can shoot me an email as well. Okay, here's some deep web harvesting solutions. So what we've done is we're starting to get people come out there and try to help us harvest the data from the deep web. I won't spend too much time in here because you have the names, and in one case you have the URL. But Chickenfoot, the reason I put that one first, that's out of MIT. So it's not just companies trying to do this. It's big in research, and universities trying to do the same thing. So just keep an eye on Chickenfoot's one, Grease Monkey, and you'll notice the common dynamic here. The common dynamic is these are all Mozilla Firefox browser additions and plugins. So CoScripters, a system for recording, automating, sharing processes, right? That's a plugin for a Firefox browser. And then the last one here is Yahoo Pipes, an online service that lets you remix popular feed types and mashups of data, right? And you can run your own projects or publish and share your own web servers without ever writing code. Some of you out there might not like writing code. I mean, I come from a coding background, but I know a lot of people don't like to write code. So in this case, Yahoo Pipes might be the best one for you. And I just wanted to give you some examples there as part of the presentation, because my job, what I try to do, my goal when I do one of these webinars is to give you some of the data, but try to give you some places to go and references to look up the information. And then the demo show you a little bit of a tool that interacts with the information we covered in the webinar. That's what I always try to do. So how do you access the dark web? Get the Tor browser. So I'm giving you a quick start accessing the dark web. Get a virtual private network. If you already have one, great. If you already have the Tor browser, great. You're already there. Remember, 2 clicks from the Tor browser and you're in the dark web. Well, deep web, and then dark web, you usually got to put in some type of credentials. Open up Tor, connect to the dark web. And there's your search engine references. So as I said, these are the things you want to do. Deepwebsites.com has some good data on there. So they have a whole list of search engines. They got links, but remember, take your links with a grain of salt, because there's a good chance that the links might be broken or not working anymore. And then you got destinations with that, communities, most interesting deep web communities, and they change on a continual basis. But there's the references for you, so you can go and try to do some of this on your own. So let's take a look at a quick demo here and see if I can set this up. So it's going to go black when I cover the screen, so just I'll tell you that. And now I'm going to share, hopefully. So bear with me a minute while I try to get the right screen up here. Okay, so my Starweaver people, are you seeing the HMA or are you seeing the other monitor? I hate because it always does this thing different. Do you see the Hide My Ass Pro VPN?
Yeah, I see that.
Okay, perfect, good. Because they always reverse it. So there. So what I'm doing here is, this is my favorite VPN. Everybody has different ones. I like this one. And what I'm doing here, I'm selecting different things. I'm just going to do Las Vegas for now. I'm actually in California. But what it is with a VPN, you can pretend to be anywhere, right? So what I like here is I can randomly change my IP address every couple minutes. So that's a good way to even make yourself even more anonymous by changing the different actual times and changing your IP address, right? I just want to show you how to do that. So I'm actually connected, as you see up here in the corner over here, it says connected. So I'm connected. Once I'm connected in my VPN, I'm ready to start my Tor browser. So this is a virtual machine method of doing it with a live ISO image. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to go into one of the popular search engines for the actual access. It's called Onion Link. So I'm actually going to use Onion Link, and Onion Link allows us to link to different types of sites. And when OnionLink comes up, remember, I'm encrypted in a VPN. I'm also using Tor, which means I'm going through all these proxies and intermediaries, which means it's going to take quite a while before it comes up, which is why I'm not doing this live, because it would just be too slow to be doing it through a VPN. So here's the actual search engine OnionLink, enable and search and global access for Tor Onion sites. So that's the type of thing. So I'm just going to do a simple search in here and put in an actual term to search for. Now remember, you can take any term you want when you search for it, but these are the types of things you want to look at. So we're going to just do dark web here with Tor, search engines. So just showing you how you can do it, and they use DuckDuckGo by default there. And explore the hidden internet. As I told you, that website I like to use is deep websites that I showed you. All right. So deep web, right, Tor system, those types of things. So you can search around here. Remember, the whole time I'm doing this, I'm on an actual virtual machine using a live ISO image. I'm in a virtual private network, so I'm about as protected as you can get. And here I wanted to show you that there's actually a place you can go that gives you a tutorial, the daily dot, how to search the darknet. And it goes through, and you can take your time and read through this. I'm not going to spend much time here because I said we're getting right at the end of time, and I want to make sure that we get some time for questions if anybody's got any. And you see, it's a pretty much nice thing. They got images, and they step by step go through and walk you through the tutorial of searching the actual deep web, which is very important. So that's what we want to actually show how to do by looking at that. Now I'm just going to take this top one here just to give you an idea. If you notice, it's slow because it's going through all this protections. And there's AMIA. AMIA is hidden services, a Tor network access hidden services. So it's a way to search it. I didn't get into the really deep criminal ones. One, because I don't want to disclose too much how to be a criminal, that you can decide that on your own. But I want to show you how easy it is to find credit cards. So I just do a credit card search. And you start going down here, and the first time is okay, but you start scrolling down and you start seeing dumps of credit cards. You start seeing the undermarket credit cards, the credit card shop, more undermarket, those types of things. And if you go down far enough, you'll start finding cloned credit cards and credit cards with the PIN numbers, and yeah, you get the idea. So I want to just show you one quick way to do it. So the next one I want to look for is malware, and then I'll conclude this demo, and then I'll show how I set up my virtual machine, and then get to the final slide, and we can open it up for questions. So index and malware. I want to show you this one here because this is malware right here, and there's the source code. And if you want Windows malware, there's your Windows one. I didn't go into that, but the source code. So all I have to do is click on that source code link, and it literally gives me the source code for Jigsaw, Hidden Terramaster, Random Master, and then this nice little .asm assembly code. So you just get an idea of how the process works. And that was my goal, is to show you how the actual process works to probe the deep and the dark web. Okay, so let's go back to the first. This is the setup. Let me show you how I set it up here. So this is my Parrot Live virtual machine. This is what I just did the demonstration on. So all I did was take Parrot, which is a popular, some of you might know Kali Linux out there. This is another version similar to that. And I boot it off of the ISO image, right? So when I go here, you see it's using this live ISO image file. So since it's using that ISO image file, there is no actual hard disk presence. If you want to be safer, I could even click on the hard disk here and remove it, and then I would know for sure there's no hard disk presence. But I wanted to show you how that was done. Okay. So there's my data. You'll have, like I said, you have more things that you can view this later, those types of things. So I've got data there. And one thing I like to do, since you did sit through the webinar, those of you that are still here, there's a discount code for my Udemy class on Wireshark in stone, all uppercase. That'll save you 75%. And now I think I'll turn it back over to Starweaver and see if anybody's got any questions. I don't see any questions in the chat box except for one person wanted to be made the presenter. I'm not sure why they wanted to be made the presenter, but I asked the question. I don't see any questions from anybody.
Yep.
So,
Kevin,
Starweaver,
Paul,
you want to take it back over?
Sure, Kevin, this is Paul. Thank you very much. A really deep dive very quickly. There's a lot of information here, so if there's any questions, why don't we get it going? If not, I will ask the question, Kevin, what's the biggest risk for an enterprise in actually having someone test out what's going on about them in the dark web? Maybe I guess the question is, how do you protect your identity on the dark web?
You got to follow that quick start process that I showed, where you do the VPN and all that type of stuff. And if they're going to use and they're going to participate in the forums, make sure they do it with total anonymity, because yeah, that's the challenge. I mean, like I said, I've got colleagues and we're doing that now with a couple of clients, and they literally, a lot of people think they're really Russian hackers, but they're not. They're actually this company's type of employees that are doing nothing but maintaining that in the dark web. So yeah, you got to go through all those requirements we talked about. And another good thing to do is to go in and make sure that you use, if you're really paranoid about it, use the USB key. Just boot from a USB key, use Tails, and then there's really no way they can trace you. So that the biggest risk to the company is the person doing the search or anything will be outed and identified to work for a certain company.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Maybe while we wait for other questions to come in, another question I might have is, so what is the, besides the ones that are publicly known, let's say, what are some key indications that you are in a very problematic position with your company and business as it relates to information on the dark web? I mean, that's sort of a generic question, but how would you know, what's the biggest red flag, I guess is a simple way to put it. What's the biggest red flag?
Well, I mean, what normally happens is people get compromised, right? So I'll put up here, I got one more slide. There's a website, haveibeenpwned.com. And it starts looking for credit cards and all that type of stuff. And I have email addresses on there that's been pwned. So
that's a good way to check, even on an enterprise and also on a consumer level.
Well, yeah, but what you would do is put in your corporate domain. And then if you put in your corporate domain and see if there's any hits. Yeah, and you would identify if people started attacking you, all that type of stuff. But the reality is, that's why it's so hard and why people get paid to do that service and search and look, because they try to hide the information as much as possible so people don't know until they've already sold it, and then they start using it in attacks. All right, there's somebody left one. Is there any files left on a PC if you use Tails? Well, if you use Tails and you boot from the USB, the answer is no. But now, me being the paranoid security professional, if you want to be the safest, then either boot with a machine that has no hard drive on it, then you know there's not going to be anything there, or just disconnect your hard drive when you actually do it, if you want to, do it to the maximum type of thing. But most of the people listening out there probably know how to do integrity checking, those types of things. So what you could do is run an integrity check on your system before you go and do the things you need to do with Tails, and then run an integrity check when you're done with Tails when you boot back up and make sure it hasn't changed. Now, this will be protected in most cases. It's usually protected on most environments. I mean, that's kind of how it works. So, I mean, yeah, they tell you there's no presence, but you're right. There's no guarantee. So the best thing is cover yourself. So I actually, if I am doing the research and I'm doing it, I pick up the oldest laptop I got, and I just pull it out just for that purpose. And when you get done, you shut it down. Because remember, the thing is, if you're not using a regular machine that you use, if it's off, I can't attack it. There's no hacker in the world that can attack an actual, laptop or a machine if it's off. Now, that's not the true case for a phone. Phones can be turned on by the ISP. The only way you can prevent that is if you remove the battery, and in most cases, we can't remove the battery. Okay, let's see. So that was that answer.
At the moment, it doesn't seem like there are any others, Kevin. Again, a phenomenal presentation, really done crisply and lots of depth. I would really encourage everyone to give us feedback. So there's a link on the side that was been sent around. Please do give us feedback. Number one, to let us know what we did well and what we didn't do well, and what questions may have been, sort of lingering, or what we could have done better. And also, you get access to one of our courses, one of which happens to be Kevin's course as well. But most importantly, give us feedback also on what other types of programs, particularly in this domain of Kevin's expertise, you might like to have done. So that gives us good guidance as well as to what's going on in your organization. Of course, obviously, if there's any other deep training requirements you might perceive in your organization, let us know. Happy to help out. Anyway, I think we're close to the top of the hour. No more questions are coming in, Kevin. Wonderful program once again. I really appreciate it. Everyone does. And everyone have a wonderful day and a wonderful week ahead.
Thank you.